OKRs without executive buy-in don't work. It's that simple. You can train your teams, set up the software, write perfect objectives and key results, and run check-ins every week. If leadership isn't actually behind it, the whole thing will unravel within a quarter or two. I've seen this happen with enough organizations to say it with confidence. Executive sponsorship is the single most important factor in whether OKRs succeed or fail. Research on OKR adoption consistently puts committed leadership at the top of the list of critical success factors. Not the quality of goals, not the choice of the software, not the training program. Leadership. So if you're the person trying to bring OKRs into your organization and your executives aren't yet convinced, this video is for you. Before you can get buy-in, it helps to understand what you are up against. In my experience, executive resistance to OKRs usually comes from one of four places. We've tried frameworks before. This is the most common one. Many leadership teams have been through SMART goals, balanced scorecards, 40X, or some other methodology that started strong and faded within 2 quarters. They're understandably skeptical of the next thing that promises to fix strategy execution. The concern isn't irrational. It's based on experience. This sounds like more work. Executives are already stretched thin. Research shows that 85% of executive teams spend less than 1 hour per month discussing strategy. Not because they don't care, but because operations consume everything. The last thing they want is another system that adds overhead. We're not mature enough for this. Some leaders believe their organization needs to have its act together before adopting a structured goal-setting framework. And as if OKRs are something you graduate into after you've already figured out strategy execution on your own. We already have a way of doing things. Every organization sets goals in some form, whether that's through annual budgets, project plans, or informal priorities. The question, why change, is reasonable, especially when the current approach feels sufficient even if it's not particularly effective. Understanding which of these is driving the resistance shapes how you respond. The mistake most people make is walking into the room and pitching OKRs as a methodology. They explain objectives, key results, initiatives, cadences, alignment structures. The executive team's eyes glaze over because they're hearing process, not outcomes. Flip it. Start with the problem your organization actually has and let OKRs be the answer rather than the starting point. Most leadership teams will recognize at least one of these pain points. Teams are working hard, but progress on strategic priorities is slow or unclear. Different departments are pulling in different directions without realizing it. Goals get set in Q1 and nobody looks at them again until the end of the year. Leadership can't get a clear picture of how the organization is tracking against its strategy without requesting manual status updates. People don't understand how their daily work connects to what the company is trying to achieve. These aren't abstract problems. They're expensive. According to HBR, 67% of well-formulated strategies fail due to poor execution. Only 5% of employees understand their company's strategy. A 2025 survey of 250 plus leaders found that 81% of organizations experience delays when accountability is unclear. And 77% report that silos between departments hinder execution. When you frame OKRs as the solution to a pain the leadership team already feels, the conversation shifts from why should we adopt another framework to how do we fix this? Executives think in outcomes, not in frameworks. They want to know what will change, how fast, and at what cost. I found that the most effective way to present OKRs to a leadership team is to connect the framework directly to their existing strategic priorities. Pick one strategic goal the company is already pursuing, something the CEO or executive team has publicly committed to, and show how OKRs would structure the execution for that specific goal. For example, if the company's strategic priority is improving customer retention, show how that translates into a company-level objective, such as become the vendor our customers can't live without, with measurable key results, such as reduce churn from 8 to 5%, increase NPS from 32 to 50, and grow expansion revenue by 25%. Owned by specific teams with initiatives that represent the actual projects driving those numbers. This makes OKRs concrete and immediately relevant instead of theoretical. The executive team isn't evaluating a methodology in the abstract. They're looking at a better way to execute something they already care about. Some executives need evidence before they commit. That's fair. Here are the data points that tend to land. Companies using OKRs report nearly 60% higher revenue growth compared to peers, and 76% report improved alignment across teams. Sears Holdings' controlled study of 20,000 employees found that regular OKR users were 11.5% more likely to move into a higher performance bracket. McKinsey's 2024 survey of 1,000+ employees found that 72% cite goal setting as their #1 motivator for performance. Organizations with clear accountability see improved results 95% of the time, according to a 2025 survey of 250+ leaders. You don't need all of these. Pick the one or two that resonate most with your leadership team's priorities. If they're focused on growth, lead with revenue data. If they're worried about alignment, lead with that. If they care about employee engagement, use the McKinsey finding. The fastest way to kill executive buy-in is to propose a company-wide rollout on day one. Leaders who have been burned by previous framework rollouts will immediately picture the disruption, the training, the resistance, and the inevitable fizzle. Instead, propose a pilot. Start with leadership and 1 or 2 teams. Keep it contained. 1 objective per team, 2 to 3 key results each, 1 quarter. This approach de-risks the entire initiative. If it works, you have internal proof. If it doesn't, you've learned something without disrupting the whole organization. I've written about this approach in detail in our OKR pilot program guide, but the key insight is this. The teams that participate in the pilot become your internal champions. They're the ones who will advocate for OKRs from experience rather than theory, and that peer advocacy is far more persuasive to a skeptical executive than any consultant slide deck. This is the non-negotiable. If the executive team endorses OKR but doesn't personally use them, the rest of the organization will treat the framework as optional. Research on OKR critical success factors puts leadership leads by example at the very top. It's not enough for the CEO to say, "We're doing OKRs now." The CEO needs to have their own objectives and key results. The executive team needs to review them regularly. When the leadership team talks about OKRs in their meetings, references them in decisions and updates their progress visibly, the signal to the rest of the organization is unmistakable. This matters. In my experience, the moment the CEO starts asking, "How does this connect to our objectives?" in a meeting, the culture shifts. People realize this isn't a side project, it's how the company runs. This one deserves special attention because it's the most persistent objection. Executives who are already drowning in operational work see any new system as a threat to their bandwidth. The honest answer is that OKRs do require some upfront investment. Setting good objectives takes thought. Defining measurable key results takes discipline. Building the review cadence takes calendar time. But the return on that investment comes quickly. OKRs replace the chaos of unclear priorities, misaligned teams, and manual progress reporting with a system that makes all of those things structural. A 50-minute weekly check-in on key results replaces the 45-minute status meeting where nobody is sure what anyone is working on. Progress becomes visible without someone having to compile a report. Alignment happens through the system rather than through endless ad hoc conversations. The executives I've worked with, who initially resisted OKRs as more work, are often the ones who become the strongest advocates because they experience firsthand how much clearer and faster decisions become when everyone is working from the same set of priorities. Getting executive buy-in for OKRs isn't about winning an argument. It's about connecting the framework to problems leadership already recognizes, showing evidence that it works, proposing a low-risk starting point, and making sure leaders don't just endorse OKRs but actually use them. The organizations that succeed with OKRs are almost always the ones where the executive team went first.